All right, good morning and welcome back to Topics and Tangents here on Gaming with ADHD, where today we are joined by Wade Dyer, or joined with. Now, I can't word all of a sudden. Sorry, folks. By Wade Dyer from Fragged Empire. Talk about game design. We're going to talk about his new edition of Fragged Empire, and I think he's even got some other things coming down the pipe, but we'll get into that as we go. But Wade, welcome to Gaming with ADHD. How you doing today?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks so much. I'm glad we could finally do this. I know it took our scheduling a little while to line up.
Dude, everything could have gone wrong, and I'm like he's gonna think that I just tried to scam some free PDFs out of him, and now I'm out. That's literally why I emailed you yesterday. No, I'm feeling better. It'll be okay. Don't worry.
I think like everyone who's involved in this hobby, everyone does it because we're passionate about it. Absolutely everyone. So I think it's all fine. You know, everything will be a bit rough around the edges, and we'll get there in the end.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm glad to finally meet up with you. I've looked at Fragged in the past. I haven't. I'll be honest. I haven't played it yet. I'm up front there, but it has been interesting to kind of follow you just on social and see what you talk about as far as game design, things like that. So when you put the call out there, hey, who should I talk to? It's like, well, I mean, you know, here's an open platform. Come on, let's do something. So anyways, regardless, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we finally made this happen. And we've already got a few people in chat asking questions. Now, Flavio, we're going to, just so you know, I'm not ignoring your question. I'm going to hold it for later, however, because at first I want to talk and just kind of get to know Wade. This is our first time meeting. And so we will go from there. And I know we have at least one more Australian in chat because Seraphis just showed up.
Nice. Always nice to meet another Aussie.
I mean, okay. I'm not going to make the jokes. I like the joke about the Australia's not real. It's not there, and it makes me laugh. But you know, I need to be nice anyhow. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, who are you? Where did you come from? I mean, you know, since clearly Australia isn't real, you know.
Oh man, it's always that like start from the beginning. Well, I was born in, and you know, me in a nutshell, I guess. Sort of, I grew up in country Australia, just a small rural town, and was gaming with my friends who introduced me to RPGs when I was a teenager. I have quite the story one day that I'm gonna share with the world about my first RPG game. And anyway, I eventually moved to the city because I needed work. I wanted to find a wife, so you know, had to do it's a story as long as time for the country boy. And you know, moved to Melbourne, and I thought I could either I love creating stuff because I was a graphic designer. I liked making things. I thought, well, I could play lots of computer games while I'm bored because I've moved to a new town and haven't got many friends yet. Or I could like make my own RPG, which idea had in my head. And so I kind of did. And I kind of got carried away. And there I go. As I think I was describing just before the show, I consider myself a GM who just got carried away. Then I released Fragged first about 10 years ago, put it on Kickstarter, went way better than I expected. So I effectively fired myself from my previous work, which was as a church youth worker. I was working part-time and as a graphic designer. And now I've been doing this for the last decade, and I love it. And I finally got the second edition out, or I get to fix and polish up all those things that have been annoying me for years and years and years. And yeah, I'm very happy with how Fragged's going.
Good. All right. So small town Australia, you know, I kind of envision that sort of like small town United States, just because, you know, it's massive. There's not a whole lot of people, you know, out there. So how does one find a role-playing game? Like, Okay.
Well,
Real quick, I'm going to guess you're a
Hmm.
little bit younger than me. I'm close to 50. You
I'm
know,
I'm, I'm 38.
38.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't want I don't try to ask for like too much like specific information just because internet people are weird sometimes.
Yeah.
Um yeah, so but yeah, so how did you find, role playing games as a kid?
Yeah. So I didn't find role playing games. They found me. I was went to a new high school, gone to the public high school, and my family had just moved churches, and I reconnected with an old friend that I had from primary school. And this old friend was into like Magic the Gathering and Warhammer and role playing games, D&D. And I'm like, what is some of it? Like, what is this D&D? I know the other stuff. And then he invited me over, and he had a bunch of really old neckbeard men hanging out playing games for teenagers. So I thought, okay, this is a little weird. Like us in the role playing community, we're really used to actually multi generational games.
Right.
Like it's so common for the old guy and the kid and everything in between to be at the same table at a convention, and everyone thinks it's normal. Like it's lovely. But that's actually not the case in a lot of hobbies. A lot of hobbies are pretty kind of specific in terms of the age, or you just hang out with people your age. Anyway, that's a whole thing. And this friend introduced me to another friend who got the nickname the Shepherd. He just had a habit of finding nerds and finding misfits, and he's so lovely. Jai, he actually helped me write some of the Fragged books. And he was super passionate about all the stuff he does. He's a lovely guy, and he just sort of brought you in. He brought all the people together, all the nerds together, and we had a little community. And that was it. Like every week, we'd go over to his place and play scrappy games. We grew up playing the hero system. Actually, that was my
Okay.
teen years. Was the hero system. And because it's actually not that great of a rule system, sorry, we homebrewed the hell out of that thing. We never bought adventure modules. The game system was not that good, so we made it work. And so I grew up in a culture of homebrewing. Everything was homebrewed all the time. And so that was normal for me. That's what RPGing was. And then eventually I move and I see other things. I go, oh my goodness, there's conventions. I didn't know conventions existed. Oh my goodness, there's adventure modules. People actually like this stuff, And so it was I had my own little bubble where I grew up, but I loved it. It was great.
Okay. So was it always just role playing games for you? Did you branch out, try some like what board games or miniatures, anything like that, or you're like, nope?
We did all the stuff. We did Magic the Gathering. It's way too expensive for a teenager. We did Warhammer, also way too expensive for teenagers.
Which is weird because that's who they market to.
Yeah, it's an odd one there. But we did like the whole LAN gaming. We did all the stuff, like lots of Mountain Dew and Cheetos and hanging out late at night. This was the time where people went through a fad of using TVs as monitors, like big flat screen TVs as monitors.
Right.
So we do one night we were LAN gaming at a mate's place, and at 2:00 in the morning we're going home. And so we're exiting the house, all of us carrying TVs. The police come by and they're like, hang on a moment. And so they pull up and they go, oh, boys, what are you up to? Oh, we're just LAN gaming. And they took down all our details, and it's just fine. But I have a bunch of memories being pulled up by the police at night, because you just traveling late at night, carrying junk in your car. I don't know. It's just
giant heavy backpacks. What are you doing? It's books, I promise.
Oh man, I have so many stories. One day I'm gonna have to do a YouTube video of all my wild stories to do with nerds and RPGs, and yeah.
That's fantastic. So then I love when my brain just like, nope, I'm not going to give you a question right now. So no, I mean that is kind of one of those things where it RPGs typically kind of seem very very like formative when you're a teenager. Like for me, like I got in with the Robotech role-playing game like 7th or 8th grade. And so that was how I got introduced to the hobby. You know, and so it just kind of determines what kind of things we're interested in. So what is it that made you decide that that you wanted to get into designing role-playing games? I mean, you had a decent job, you had, you know.
Yeah. Well, I guess kind of like how I said it before, like I just kind of accidentally fell into it. But look, I'm a really creative person. I love making stuff. I've always been making stuff. And this is why I got into graphic design, because I would make stuff and creatively solve problems for other people. And I think I've always liked game design. I grew up in a culture of home brewing. And then I think when you're just passionate, sometimes when the soil is fertile and enough seeds get planted, sometimes something really good sprouts out of that lasts long, you know. Sometimes the little projects I've had over the years have just lasted like a year or a month or a couple of years, whereas Fragged has been over a decade. So it's something in there that's really resonated with me. It's resonated with my interests, my abilities, but also resonated with the community. And I think when you get that stuff, it just sort of works and it keeps going and going and going. If one of those things weren't there, it would have died early on and I would have just done something else. I would just keep creating. Like if I wasn't doing Fragged, I'd be making other things. And maybe one of those things would have been what would have taken off or resonated or what have you. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question. I know it's a little airy, fluffy. The creative process, I did not sit down and think, I'm going to make a business out of this. I'm going to make a job out of this. I thought I was going to make a book, get one book, publish it. It's going to cost me a bunch of money, but I'm never going to tell anybody that it cost me lots of money. Act like it was amazing. And I'm going to be an old man and I'm going to point to the bookshelf and say, I made that book there. That was something I did. That was good. I just wanted this. I love books. I love RPGs. I love design. I thought I was just going to make something cool and put it out there. But it turned into something special. It turned out to be bigger and resonated more than I expected. And so, yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers your question.
No, you're fine. Trust me. It's just gonna go and my distracted brain will figure it all out, you know, at some point. So you said you started with Hero System. Were there other role-playing games that you got into, or did it basically go from Hero into Fragged?
So that's I think people ask me a similar question often about what's Fragged like, because they're trying to compare it to something else, or what's my inspirations. And I find this a little bit trickier. So I am actually very not well versed in lots of RPGs. I grew up playing the Hero System a lot, and then I played a bit of D&D 4th edition. My family was so I never really grew up playing D&D or lots of other stuff that was out there. So I think probably my big inspiration, oddly enough, is probably from computer games. So okay. I play computer games, and one of the things I've always done ever since I was little is I played for the mechanics. Love strategy games. And then I really got into board games. I really like board games, how you can see all the mechanics in front of you. And I really like elegant mechanics, where it's like it's one cog, but it does a bunch of things, you know? Mm-hmm. I love that sort of stuff. And I would probably say that's probably informed Fragged more. Like, okay, for example, if you've played XCOM, you're immediately going to go, I see some Fragged in XCOM, you know?
Okay.
That's a bit in there. And that stuff's pretty common. Like, that's just kind of my design process. And this has had a good and a bad effect, okay? So, A harder thing is that it actually makes Fragged mechanically quite distinctive in the RPG scene. And I consider that a good thing. I would like to see RPGs and indie RPGs be more mechanically diverse, more interesting takes on things. I don't think that's been a great thing over the last couple of decades for us. And so that's helped Frag stand out, but it's also made it a little bit more to get people in, because there's that slight barrier, because people get very comfortable with stuff, which I think is perfectly understandable. There's a reason everyone plays D&D all the time. It's not because D&D is amazing. It's because everyone knows D&D. The rules, the mechanics, the flow, the language, that's kind of this design literacy that people have in their head, they've generated. And that's fine. Like, I am not dissing that at all. That's just the way that humans work. I think as soon as you get designers that lament the way that people actually work in reality, you have a problem. You've always got to make sure that you're making games for people that actually exist and how they actually work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're saying we don't need another D&D clone out there?
I would say I would like there to be a giant influx of money into the industry to create lots of to fund the creation of lots of different RPGs, and there's inevitably going to be another D&D clone.
No, I'm just teasing, but yeah, no, it is kind of one of those things. Like, one of the jokes in our circles is you look at I think it was basically somebody was doing a review, and I want to say it was of Shadow Dark last year. And they were talking about how it has 50 years of innovation, and it's a D&D clone again. So no, and that was actually one of the things. Like, when you sent me the PDFs, which admittedly, folks, I haven't memorized them yet. Yes, it's been 2 weeks since he sent them to me, but I've also been sick and other issues. But no, there are some unique things. When you mentioned that you played a lot of D&D 4th edition, then I started realizing, oh wait, yeah, he's thrown a lot of miniature rules in there, which don't seem like 4th edition, as far as, like, 4th edition was very much, I'm just gonna call it a miniatures game as opposed to a role-playing game. This one, Fragged is definitely more of a, hey, if you'd like to do this, here's all the rules for it. So it's interesting that to see some of those influences where normally you don't, especially also your reference of more video game input. What is it that you think makes pulling from video games more interesting as opposed to, say, pulling from other role-playing games?
Yeah. I don't think I'd say it's necessarily more interesting. So I think it's just a matter of, I play a bunch of video games. I really like board games. There's a giant pile over there, I think it's just a matter of just what I happen to do. Like, this is what sort of where I'm drawing inspiration from. And so that's where it just happens to come from. It's not necessarily an intentional thing. I think, though, that it needs to be said, obviously, this is really clear. Okay. You're making a role-playing game, like, you're creating a distinctive type of game. You're not just trying to create a computer game or a board game as an RPG. That's not how that works. But I think part of it is just, I found RPGs a little bit samey in their design. And so I thought there's just more interesting stuff going on in other places. But I don't want to do this like some giant diss. Okay.
Sure.
So let's say for every one person you've got making an RPG, you have 1,000 people making a computer game, or 100 people playing a board game. there's just a lot more people in those coming up with stuff and iterations on ideas. And so I think I just like to go to some of their sources where I can sort of see, okay, well, there's just some really interesting stuff going on here. How this flow, and how do you somehow tie improv drama, which is effectively what role playing is, with that nice, satisfying click of mechanics. The numbers and the gears. You want that harmonizing to create something beautiful. And that's one of the things that RPGs do the best, is that they draw from everything, like science, theater, maths, combat, history, philosophy, art, human interaction, social. RPGs are incredibly broad of what the sort of stuff they cover from. And so I liked covering from, and that's a good thing. That's what makes them special. A computer game or a board game doesn't do that. They are very tight.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it was, we were having our Wednesday chat yesterday, and we had a couple of the designers of the Star Trek Adventures role playing on, and somebody had asked, because they were talking about the recent Captain's Log supplement that came out for solo role playing. And somebody's like, well, why would you do solo role playing over just playing a video game? And one of those designers actually brought up a really good point, that with video games, you do have that constrained, fixed, setting. If you want to go over the mountain, but the game doesn't have anything over the mountain, you don't go. If you want to talk to the NPC, okay, he has a list of 3 or 4 things that he can respond with, but that's it. Whereas in the role-playing game, you get that expansion. You can take, like you said, take all of those things. Like we did one of our, we're playing Star Trek Adventures, and we had one where it was essentially a counseling session. Was how the whole session played out. So yeah, you definitely get those different aspects brought in.
And I think there's a beautiful moment where every single person who's played an RPG has this moment, or you might have seen it in other people. That moment where you've just played an RPG for the first time, and the person asks the GM, "Can I do such and such?" And the GM says, "Yes, you can attempt anything you want." And at that moment where the brain goes, anything, nothing else gives that,
Right.
Like nothing, like that. That's the improv theater bit coming in there, where you can attempt anything. And that is I think that's probably one of the most special linchpins of RPGs and what makes them special, which we all take for granted because we've been doing this forever, But when you're new and you only know the world of these other entertainment mediums, yeah,
exactly right. It's either being fed to you by the movie or the television show, or it's giving you your constrained set of interactions. Yeah, it's definitely much more restrictive. But even the an RPG does have some constraints. I mean, like you said, you can attempt anything. Because there has to be that chance of failure. Otherwise, it's like, well, I do this. Okay, great, you did it.
Oh man, are we going to get into a discussion of the GMing styles of no, yes, and
we don't have to, but
we probably won't, because I have opinions on that one.
You have opinions? I never would have guessed. So then, what made you decide that you wanted to make your own game?
I think I had a story in me. When I started out, I started with two settings. I had 2 settings in my head. I had this idea of a fantasy world that was very. It was lots of how how do you put it, like a multi-dimensional sort of thing. And then I had this science fiction post-apocalyptic, and I found that the science fiction one just sort of it seemed to work a lot more. It got my brain more excited. I thought it felt more original, more interesting, and I think that's probably why I started off doing Fragged Empire rather than some other things. Yeah.
Okay, but why was it just because you wanted to? Well, so if you had just a story you wanted to tell, why make a whole new game as opposed to just like a setting guide or something?
Oh
like
yeah,
that?
so maybe a story. It's a world I want to build. I have a habit of kind of doing everything the hard way. Like I just kind of like I'm gonna make everything from scratch, the ground up. I'm gonna do my own rules, my own world. You know, I'm gonna go find my own artists. I'm not gonna go work with artists that other people are using already. I'm gonna go find new artists. I'm going to go find people to help me do some of the writing with this who have never even played RPGs before. Like I kind of, this just the way I work. It's my system. I don't, how do you put this? I want every single aspect of my game to be beautiful, wonderful, and have that sense of freshness about it. I think if you build on someone else's work, that can be more efficient. I think if I was going to have a more successful business model, I probably would totally be doing D&D games or stuff based off other people's IPs. But that doesn't get me excited. And I don't think if I'm excited, I'm going to lack the energy to actually complete the project. And so I need to do a project that gets me excited and works for me to be able to do this. Like, because you've got to get up every day. Like, I've got to work. There's no, like, I don't know, there's no salary. There's no, it's just, and I think I've got to be excited to be able to do it. Otherwise, I'll lose energy and I'll go do something else,
Oh,
you need that fuel.
I can absolutely relate to that. That is my wife and I were talking, like like just doing the YouTube stuff. Like I was taking, well, had some things happen around Christmas time, and I just got out of the habit of making videos. And so I've been struggling to get back in and get doing things. And my wife said the same thing. She's just like, no, you've lost that excitement. And so that, you need to find that again in order to get back to doing it. So I absolutely understand what you're saying there. I mean, because obviously, I mean, it is a massive undertaking to go, like, because reading through Fragged, like, I'm not necessarily going to say that what I've seen is necessarily innovative, but it is, there is definitely a lot of thought going into the mechanics that you're using. So 10 years ago, you decide, okay, I'm gonna put this out here. How long did you do it? Like, well, not necessarily obviously the art, because you said you went and got new artists. Did you do all the original writing yourself for Fragged First Edition, or?
Yeah, it's actually been an interesting one. So I did all the ideas and the briefs and stuff like that, and I worked with people to develop stuff for my first edition a lot. But I got a friend of mine help, especially with the short stories. My first edition had a lot of short stories in it. This second edition has still, I've got a couple of short stories, like in the front of my setting book and my location guide book, I've got a short story. But the rest of it is a little bit more straight world building. Here's how this planet works, this culture, this faction, this technology, and just sort of write about it. With the second edition, I wrote most of it, pretty much, not all of it, because I like to bring in other people. That's actually important. It adds variance in flavor, and like But this second edition, I wrote most of it myself. But this is also because a lot of the mental legwork had been done with first edition, like we'd problem solved it, and now I just got to flesh it out, and I already had everything in my head. So yeah,
you'd already kind of gone through and figured out what had worked, what didn't work.
Yeah. So my setting guidebook, I pretty much wrote all of that. But I still want to give credit because other people helped, especially with first edition, helped plant and mature lots of these seeds. So I never take full ownership of something. Yeah.
Okay. So what was your inspiration for Fragged Empire?
Yeah, so you draw inspiration from a lot of different sources, obviously. I think I really like people, and I like looking at why people are the way that they are. And so that whole nature nurture thing, I think, is a big theme in Fragged. And that idea. So I really like, I'm very interested by philosophy and cultural stuff. The arts are really big. I really like the arts, and the arts are connected with culture, and the sort of both expressing how people are and also changing people how they are, maturing people's ideas on stuff. And so I think Fragged was largely a giant big exploration about what if. And so I come up with these bunch of different species that I tried to make to varying degrees. Like some are more original than others. So like the Zhao are sentient big bioweapon goop,
Right.
that's pretending to be humanoid. All the way over to the Corp, which is this caricature of capitalism, but are not necessarily the bad guys. And so it's this kind of, and so what I do is I sort of grab an interesting idea and then I pull on it. And so some of these, for example, these ideas is of, okay, the corporation, they're anarcho-capitalists. What would that look like, and what's an interesting take on that in this post-apocalyptic setting? And then how do I round them out by having good and bad takes on them? But that's like one of my examples. I find it, okay, let's say the Kaltorans, they're very big on, they've got genetic memories, so they can pass on memories to their children. And I thought, okay, that's big on family. Okay, family. They're really into family. Family's super important to them. They're all friendly. They're all a bunch of Han Solos going around in jackets, in big hats, and a bunch of rogues. But then I thought, oh man, these guys are so happy and clappy. You need an edge for it. How do you have the light and the dark in that? And I thought, and I came up with the idea to survive, to get where they were, they had to turn to cannibalism. And so therefore, they're eating their own people and passing on the memories of doing this to the future generations. And I thought, oh, that's a great way, because that brings in this idea of family, multi-generational story themes that they had. And you flesh it out and you find these interesting takes. And I try and do that for all of them, like the Nephilim. They are the monsters, the big biogenetic monsters that waged war on everyone else, like the Zerg, but they won. Unlike every other story, they actually won. And then what does that look like afterwards? Do they start another war? They could win again, but what would be the point? And then how do they handle the PR problem with all the other species? Because they look like monsters.
Right.
And so they're really big into trying to manage their PR, but at the same time, they're genetic supremacists. And that's what I do with all the different species, because Fragged is really, it's a story of cultures. It's a story of all these distinctive cultures telling interesting, complex, simple, dark, light stories within each of them. And then finding those threads, find the threads that's interesting and run with it. So I never start at the end. You always start at the start, and then you flesh that out. And I think that's kind of how Fragged work, in that I start off with a few ideas, and then you pull at it and you pull at it until you find the interesting channels, and then you just go down it. And that's pretty much what Fragged, how that sort of came about, and how the lore got fleshed out. And yeah.
So when I was reading through it, it talking about the races and whatnot, because I do think that is actually one of the key parts about Fragged is, to me, like, it was like, okay, so these are all kind of, not all of them obviously, but a lot of them are human variants. And then as I started reading more about it, it's like, okay, sort of, but also not really. Why did you decide to get rid of humans from the game? Like, just baseline humans.
Okay. So there's a few different design philosophies in here that I work off. So one is that I work on a rough rule of thirds. So I go with a rule of thirds of familiar, interesting, original, and so you kind of got this thing is that I don't want everything to be super weird. You need that sort of point of entry. So that's why, okay, they're humanoid, they're bipedal. That's kind of, people can sort of jump in on that. And you start off with like the Corp and the Kaltorans, and then you end up with the Palantor and the Zao at the other end, which are really freaky strange, in a lot of ways. And then also I want to pull the classic old sci-fi trick. This was a trick they used to do back in the day. Whereas they make people, the alien species on Star Trek, not humans, so they can then explore really controversial and difficult topics. Okay? By making these not humans, it actually frees me up to do stuff. Because if I make them humans, then people will think, oh, he's making a commentary about blah, 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 blah. Or he's trying to say blah, 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 blah. Whereas what I'm actually trying to do is, no, this topic is interesting. How do we explore this? And I need you to stop bringing your biases in to give me room to explore it. I'm trying to explore the idea, not try to make some comment about our culture and our history, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, it absolutely makes sense. I listened to this lecture series about the history of science fiction. It's like, you can get it from Audible. It's like one of the, anyway, it's just this lecture series, and he talks about it and basically mentions, in, like you said, in Star Trek, where it's like, hey, they're humans, but they're not humans, because like, the Klingons have big bushy eyebrows. They're Klingons. They're not humans, though.
Yeah.
But then
also, here's another tie-in for you. So a big thing in an old science fiction show is they make the aliens with the funny, the head ridges, because we all understand why. It's because it's cheaper. Okay, it's expensive to go do something weird. Oddly enough, it's a little bit similar for RPGs in that I could go to an artist who are excellent at drawing people. Excellent. Not necessarily so much about coming up with an alien. That takes a lot of work to sort of figure that out. And it's like, by getting them to draw people, it also increases my production value, because I'm not getting them to learn and design something all new. Anyway, side tangent. I think about this stuff.
Oh yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Okay, just a human, but give it fur.
Well,
okay.
When I was doing the Kaltorans, I wanted to make them original, so I gave them dreadlocks and 4 pointed ears. Because I'm like, I've just tried to make them stand out a bit, a little bit different. Yeah.
That's actually really. I hadn't thought about that. You usually just kind of assume, oh well, an artist can just do whatever they want, but no, it really does. I saw something on Twitter today, and a guy was talking about so he's an artist, and he was talking about he was complaining about AI art, and we can get into that in a minute, because that was actually our first interaction.
Oh really? Man, that was my biggest. I don't get many big social media posts, but I made one about AI. Oh my goodness! Opinions. Anyway,
it was really, really interesting.
I thought we can hold that one off to later, because that's like a whole thing.
Gosh, now that got see, I told you I was going to get distracted.
Sorry,
no, it's fine. It's fine. It's not your fault. But he was talking about, he's like, well, anybody can learn to draw, and a lot of it just comes down to practice, and then muscle memory, which then, you talking about, oh, well, I can go to an artist who draws people and just say, well, we'll make 4 points on the ears. Okay, well, they can just draw a person and then just change that one little thing.
So here's a thing I know. So there's a particular species called the Legion. Ah, he's right there. There he is. Okay, so those guys are, they're kind of.
You got a statue made of your guy.
Yeah,
nice.
There's a species. They're big simian sort of stuff, like with a slight ape-like nose, the hunched shoulders. Okay, and a particular sort of proportions on them. It is so hard to get different artists to draw them correctly. Like, there's a bunch of Legion art that I have that barely even looks like Legion because it's not right, and it's particularly difficult to get that consistency. If I was going to do the consistency, I'd really want the same artist to do that species multiple times. Yeah, so and that's another reason why you don't necessarily always get different types of weird species. There is a production side of it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, no. I again, it was just it's just that realizing it's like, oh, those things, how those things come together, and just different ways of thinking. That's one reason I love having these conversations. Is just you never know what you're going to learn. Dang it! Now I just
that's fine.
I completely. I am so bad at this. So all right. So then I guess all right. I'm completely stuck. So we're gonna jump into Fragged then. Not that we haven't already been talking about it. So give everyone the elevator pitch for Fragged. What is it, and what is it that makes it special?
Okay. You know what? I'm just going to bring up. Sorry. I'm going to read the elevator pitch. Because this thing's got to be done. Okay, here's my quick one. So, your genetically engineered people are just now returning to the stars to usher in the dawn of a new age. Now is the time to reconnect with other forgotten species, explore war-torn worlds, combat ancient threats, and forge new frontiers. Fragged is a post-apocalyptic science fiction setting where your people are just now returned to space following a century of hiding during the aftermath of a galactic war where the Nephilim and their Exion masters successfully defeated the Archons and their servile nations. Yeah. It's a universe that leans heavily into themes of cultural tension and exploration, with a dash of transhumanism, nation building, and a hope for a better future. A typical game of Fragged sees you and your friends take on the role of a character from one of 8 core species. You will join together to form a ragtag band of misfits who travel around the sector in a spaceship, taking odd jobs and getting into trouble. Inspirations: Cowboy Bebop, Firefly, Farscape, the Millennium Falcon scenes from Star Wars, and a little of The Expanse. There we go. That's my elevator pitch. Hopefully, it wasn't too long.
No, that actually is perfect. It is an interesting mix of ideas in it and settings. I don't know why I'm failing at this right now.
That's all right.
No, my wife is making comments in the background like she does. I call her the peanut gallery for a reason. Anyhow, so okay, so So, all right, that's what I was going to ask. So it is post-apocalyptic, which my first real experience with that was Numenera from Monty Cook games. But he said it like millions of years in the future.
Yeah.
You went with 15,000 years.
Yeah.
Why so short?
So I think there's a thing, and I think Numenera is probably a real epitome in this in a way. If you chuck stuff way into the future, like for example, Frank Herbert's Dune, okay, it's so far into the future that it's basically might as well be another dimension. Like it's so disconnected from now. And I think that's fine. Like I think that's a good way to do it. I think for me, I wanted an emotional connection, and I feel like by making, I don't know, two things. One is I thought it was more interesting, and two, I thought it was more emotionally hitting. If it's not so far in the future, like it's within vague reach, but still far enough that you can have a lot of weird stuff happening still. So in my setting, humans reached an electronic-based technology singularity. So basically, they started to journey out into the stars, and they created lots of this weird super tech, but then they started to die out, largely due to genetic erosion, and also kind of intentionally. There was a faction of humans that were kind of orchestrated to make it happen. And then they genetically engineered a new species called the Archons to take over their empire. And then the Archons decided to play God. They made lots of other species, but they were terrible parents playing favorites. We love these ones. We dislike these ones, blah, 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 that sort of stuff. But because it's sort of not super, super far, you can kind of, it feels a little more weighty. And also the idea that Earth is actually out there. Like it's a bit like the Garden of Eden. Like it's kind of mythical. No one knows where it is or if it still exists, but there's kind of the legends are still there. And when you're exploring around, you can find ancient human ruins. So humans still have a slot within the story, even though they're all died out. And I think if I made it tens and tens or hundreds of thousands of years or a million years in the future, humans would basically they wouldn't be there. Like they wouldn't even be a fog or a wisp of a memory in there.
Sure.
And also there would be this sense that the galaxy. So in my setting, there's no true aliens, possibly, and so there is this sense of like the galaxy is still being discovered. There's stuff out there where nobody's reached before. Like all of the species are genetically engineered, flora and fauna. All of the livable planets have all been terraformed, and so there's this connection to how they formed and how they made and how they came about. And so if you go out into the deep dark of space, no one's ever been there before, and chances are there's going to be no inhabitable planets. If you find one, that's a massive deal, Or if you find a potentially true alien, which they possibly have, there's one species that's possibly alien. You don't know. They're either energy beings, aliens, or they're humans who have digitized themselves and turned themselves into like energy fog. Imagine the cheesy Star Trek effect there where they just glow. And I felt like that. I found that interesting. So I like stuff to have roots, and if the roots are too far or too deep, it becomes something different. Yeah.
No, and that's actually a really interesting point, and I'm glad you reminded me of that. Your description of essentially what happened to humanity seems to have a lot of, I'm going to just say it, real world inspiration.
Yeah, there's a if you look into the Frag lore about how humans died out, you can imagine it because you're like, and we all feel it. There's a feeling that the thing that's going to get us is not an asteroid or the sun exploding. We feel like the thing that's going to get us is us. And so it felt like this suitable ending to humans. Although, yeah.
Well, yeah, no, you said, where is it? Yeah, the fall of humanity was inevitable. Billions died alone in cloaked houses, plugged up to perpetual entertainment machines. They forgot how to struggle and caved to every pressure. Despite having access to untold scientific knowledge, they became fools and raged like spoiled children. They were served by robots they could no longer build or fix, and lived on worlds created by titanic machines they could not understand. Like when you say that you can see that, it's just like I look over at my kids and their phones, and I'll be honest, I'm no better. I mean,
we're using a computer. We don't get. But also, there's another narrative point to this. Is just you look at that's how humans died, but then that contrast, because the Archons and the species that came after that, they all know that humans died because they didn't struggle and they didn't push forward, and so that is part of the reason why everybody knows you must push forward. You must struggle. And you contrast that with the species that survived the big galactic war. They're all struggling. It's bloody hard, but there is fruit that's born out of that hardship. And now that's not me as a creator saying suffering is a good thing. Stop whinging about it. That's me as a creator saying suffering. It's that whole light dark thing. Okay, the species have light dark, the narrative points have light dark. Suffering can produce fruit as well. It can make something good. And how you respond to that, and there's lots of factors that tie into how you respond to that, because to be able to respond well to the suffering, you require good character growth, you require a community, you require connections and plug in. You need lots of stuff. And if you've got that support network, then struggling can create good things. But that struggle is still sucks. It's still real. When the Kalgorans turn to cannibalism, that's a horrible thing. But as a species, they are incredibly tenacious because of that history.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be that struggling is a bad thing. Like a lot of people are like, and forgive me if I'm interpreting this wrong. Kind of the way you described it's like, if you're not, let me rephrase that. The way you put it, where if you're not pushing forward, if you're not trying to do do something, why bother? If you're not trying to improve, if you're not trying to get, just as a cheesy example with my YouTube channel, if I'm not trying to get better thumbnails or get better at writing the descriptions and the tags, why am I doing it? Why am I just being content with that stagnation?
I think that idea about stagnation is another big theme that I have. Is that stagnation is death. It's rot, and the humans fell to the ultimate stagnation and rot of their own creation. They're victims of their own success in a way.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think it's very, very interesting. And maybe if it was unintentional, I do think it's definitely a bit of a commentary on, I'm just going to say, life in general today.
Yeah, I think as much as I try to say, I'm trying to have this enlightened centrist perspective, or this middle take on everything, Fragged is still informed by me. It's still informed by my values, and I think that's going to inevitably bleed in, and I think that's fine. That's good. This is like when my writers who I hire to do stuff and come up with ideas, they're coming up with stuff I'm not coming up with because they're bringing part of themselves into it as well. And I think that's good. It makes it authentic. Like you feel it when someone writes something they don't really believe. You know, it's never right. Like it never quite works. It always tastes wrong in a way.
No, I absolutely agree, and it has been one of the fun things to, while reading through, picking up on some of those things. You mentioned growing up and having previously worked in with church youth groups, things like that. There also seem to be some religious undertones in it. In the game, the one race that's looking for the all being or what
the remnant where the all being is the religious species. Yeah, so I myself, Christian, very interested in philosophy. I think inevitably that comes. I think religion is just part of humans. It's always been part of humans. You look at every single human culture throughout all of history, it just pops up. It always pops up. It's something in us. Of course, people have different answers as to why that keeps popping up. You have different takes on it. I think first edition Fragged, I actually didn't really have much in the way of religion. There was still worship, I would say. So, for example, the corporation, they idolize like resources, and meritocracy and their guiding anarcho-capitalist philosophy. Like that is basically a religion to them. They have their tenets and that thing that they truly believe in. The Kaltorans idolize family. Like they live for it. But I did have the Remnant as an expansion in my first edition of Fragged. They were the much more explicitly, no, we're going to use the word God, and we're going to use this more religious language, which I think people get that a lot more. So like that, for example, me talking about how the corporation effectively worship and idolize money, a lot of people are going to go, oh, that's a weird take, or that's a curious use of words. It's not a normal way of human understanding of things. But then I use the Remnant, my definitely not furries, who have the all being, because they use much more explicit religious language, and so they are a bit more overt. And I really like their story as well, because they were a bad guy species who sided with the Nephilim during the war. They were traitors, okay? And they ended up killing themselves. They became extinct at their own hands. They set off a giant big weapon that they didn't understand, and it blew them up. Okay, they were going to die anyway, most likely. But I thought, I really want these guys to suck even more, and so I'll have them. Okay, they're responsible for their own death. They're horrible people. They're not. I don't like to use the word fascist, but they were quite an evil group. Okay. They're very self-centered, and they sided with it anyway. But then they died, and then they got brought back by the All Being, which is again a bit like how maybe there's aliens, maybe the All Being is a god. It's never exactly answered, and there's multiple people with different takes on what the All Being are. Of course, some say, yes, it is a god. It's always been there. And others are saying, maybe it's just a giant, big psychic entity that was created by that super weapon we set off, And as a writer, I try to write in a way whereas both of those could be true. I'm never going to answer that. I have an answer.
Okay.
I'm never going to tell anyone. Okay. And I've done this with a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of mysteries I've put in my game, which I will never answer because I want GMs to come up with the answers. Sure. I think that's fun. I think we call it designer white space. And then, okay, so this all being brings the remnant back from the dead, and the remnant are like, oh man, what did we do to deserve this? We didn't do anything. And it's kind of this, they embark upon this redemption arc. How can we as a people not become what we were in the past? And that's made all the more difficult because some of the people walking around are the war criminals from the Great War, you know? Like that. You hear about this giant, this important general who, set off this bioweapon that killed all the civilians on a particular planet, and he died, and blah blah, and everyone hates him. And then the All Ming just decides to resurrect him from the dead, and boom, he's alive. What does that mean? Obviously, the Revenant get all sorts of prejudice problems because people are pretty grumpy with them. But they're also a bunch of monks, who give healing to people, and they're very charitable, and they live very minimalistic, aesthetic lives. And are they the same people? It's just the same. And it's the same with the other ones. You just find these interesting threads and you pull at them. Yeah.
Well, and then on top of that, it's been 100 years, so so the remnant have been brought back. So obviously you'd have new ones who weren't part of it. At that point.
Yeah. There's new ones, and they've got a different name for themselves. Culturally, they're very different. Their home world is completely different. It used to be lush and amazing, and now it's a desert wasteland because of what they did. They're obviously different. And this is with a lot of the species. There's this idea that they are not the same as what they were before the war. All of the species, they're just different because too much has happened. Reality has hit them all too hard, and they've all had to adapt, and they've become something different. Yeah.
No, it's definitely interesting reading through. I tried to at least catch the highlights on all of the different races. You've done a lot of really, really interesting things with them. So what would you say your biggest challenge was when putting Frag together?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, that one. I actually think Fragged Empire 2 was actually not that hard. I know that's a bit weird. A lot of my other projects have been quite difficult, and first edition was quite difficult. But second edition of Fragged, mostly, it really just felt like walking up to a tree and you pluck the apple, done. It's pluck another apple. I don't even have to reach. I don't have to get a ladder. And I think a lot of that was just because I've been thinking about it for 10 years. Been slow cooking in my brain. Did my first edition, which was very hard to come up with ideas and find the interesting threads and build the interconnectivity, find the artist, work about shipping. That was all very difficult. Whereas second edition, because I just had a decade of slow cooking, building up the art team, playing the rules. I knew the bits that worked and didn't work. I'd worked on lots of other iterations of Frag. I had my fantasy setting, pirate setting, gothic horror setting. So I'd stress tested the rules, so I knew the bits that were good and the bits I need to focus on, the bits I need to minimize. But if I was to pick the hardest thing, and just as looking across all of working as an RPG, I think the hardest thing is I'm really a bit torn. I think finding mechanics that really harmonize with the story. I really want beautiful mechanics that are elegant, that are not too hard but have depth. Finding that balance between really easy to get into but the sort of thing that you could play for decades and still get stuff out of. Because I think some people substitute quality for quantity. They just add in more rules. And I think that's a trap. I think coming up with elegant rules is probably the hardest thing and requires the most amount of work. Because you want stuff to be really easy to get into, but then have depth and tie into the story and the theme of the setting, plus work as a table so everyone's having fun, but not be too heavy to get in people's way. Like there's a lot of different elements there, and because there's a reason everyone's making D&D clones. Like there's a reason for it.
Right.
But I like coming up with something new. I've decided I'm going to make my own rule system, and so therefore I am responsible for my own purgatory. But it's okay.
No, but it is interesting that you bring up, you know, the rules, because one thing that I noticed when I like, I mean, because you can't not notice it, right as you get into the book, you essentially put in different rules, like, or different rule options, and tell people, hey, here are different ways you can do this. I mean, you have your rules light, your combo, your narrative, and, you know, here's just a weird thing. We're going to try this.
Yeah, it's a particular so oh man.
It's on page 10.
1 second.
Yeah.
I'm gonna like show this to the screen because this is one of those show don't tell things.
Do you want me to just share from the PDF?
No way! I have gone all the way over there to get the book.
Okay, all right.
Okay. There we go. Okay. Yeah, my sexy Twi-Far, and then see these icons. Okay. You can show from the PDF now that I've embarrassed myself. So, much more elegant. You know what you're doing. Stupid guest speakers coming in, grabbing physical books and shoving them up to the screen like amateurs. Okay, so this here, I actually think is one of the best bits of Fragged, because what this is see these little icons. In the back of my book, I have lots and lots of traits and options, and you can make all sorts of guns and spaceships and what have you. And next to all of these options is a little icon. And what this is doing, these little icons are just there to inform people. They don't actually have any mechanics behind them. And what they're doing is they are helping to inform people. So let's say at a table, you've got all different types of gamers. Some people don't like rules. So they're gonna want rules light options. Okay. Some people really love maths and they're a bit of a power gamer. You know, they love when they pick these 3 different options and the stars align and they get amazing results. Okay. Some people are the narrative gamer. They and they might maybe want an ability to add something to a scene or get extra information. You know, they put on the funny voice that always turns into an Irish drunk goblin. You know, that's just how it happens. And then you've got the other type of person that's played Fragged a lot, and they just want to mix it up. And so there's an option there called Mix It Up. And that's telling you, if you really like taking weird choices, you'd like being the weirdo at the table, look for this icon. Okay? Because something that Fragged is trying to do is it wants all of those players to sit at the same table and have fun together. And as they're building their character, sorry, I am skipping over a bunch of stuff, but I'm really proud of this bit.
It's called Topics and Tangents for a reason. It's okay, Will.
Okay. So as you're building your character in Fragged, every time you level up, the main thing that happens is you gain a trait. And as the game progresses, you're slowly building your character. But what you're doing also is altering your game experience without negatively impacting the experience of other people at the table. So that means that the person who's really into rules light stuff, they might select an option that's, you know, +1, a few passive bonuses, or maybe actually takes a rule out of the game. And they're sitting next to the table with a guy who selected all the combo options. You know, that combo person has made their game so complicated, but it's just complicated for them. In the exact same, the rules light person has made the game simpler, but it's just simpler for them. And so they're both altering these dials to alter their game experience as they get out the sort of game that they want. Hopefully that made sense. I actually think that's That's something that I was vaguely aware of when I did first edition Fragged. I was kind of like, oh yeah, there's simpler and more complicated traits. But I didn't realize how special it was. And so I thought I'd really highlight it for people to like draw their attention to it.
No, and actually that puts it in a different perspective, because in my head, it was going to be where essentially the GM, or I guess the table as a whole, would kind of pick which one they were using. I didn't realize that it's supposed to be on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, it's individual per player, and also GM options are also labeled like this, because you can have a GM who's a rules light person, or a GM who's more of a combo or a narrative person. And so when they're building an NPC, say for a fight, they can pick the stuff to give that NPC that fits their play style as well. Because a GM is a player, like small player. And so, yeah.
No, I think that's fantastic. But it's also just kind of interesting. Where you have great art, by the way.
I was thinking that. I'm thinking this is an excellent spot to skip through the PDF so people can see some of my art.
But yeah, so like right here, just it just shows, the icons.
Yeah, that's an optional rule, and it's telling you. Yeah, so if you.
Right here. Yeah, so like optional rule, failing forward, optional rule, narrative 6s and 1s.
And these icons are scattered through the book. They're particularly big at the end of the book, where all of the traits and the weapons are listed. It's the very non-sexy part of the book without any art.
I was gonna say, I hit like it's like, and it's right like about halfway through the book. Suddenly, the rest of it is like that's tables. Lots of tables.
There's a lot of tables on the back of the book. Yeah, but Fragged is really into customization, really big in that. So yeah.
No, and it's definitely an interesting design choice to try to put a lot of options on the table. So real quick, just because I noticed this one, Seraphis says, so there's 3 books, rule setting location. Are they all needed? But they're also all $85.
Yeah. Okay. So you just need the rule book and the setting book. The location guide book is purely optional. The rule book has everything mechanically you need, and the setting book is just setting guide. And I would say that if you're just going to buy one of those, like maybe you want to get one physical and the rest you might get as PDFs. PDFs are cheaper than a drive-through RPG. I recommend the setting book. It's a prettier book because it's all lore and story and art. But if you want a physical book to like have at the table to, sometimes it's useful having the rule book at the table. The other one could be good too. Yeah. But yeah, you just need the 2.
Okay. So then on top of that, you have expanded Fragged beyond just. Well, hold on before I jump out of that. So what else should we know about Fragged Empire? What have we not touched on?
Yeah. Okay. So first thing is go buy my stuff. It helps me keep doing what I'm doing.
There is a drive-through RPG link down in the description, folks. It just goes straight to the core book.
Yep, drive-through RPG is the best place to get PDFs. I've got physical stuff on my website. You can also buy through Modifius. I've been with Modifius for over a decade. They're lovely. They've got all my stuff. And what else is there? Also, if you ever buy a physical book, like let's say from your local friendly game store, just send me a message with a picture and I'll send you PDFs to everything. That's fine. I know someone else asked a question. Am I working on virtual tabletop support? I am. I'm currently paying a developer and working with a friend to get a browser-based character and NPC creator. So you can create your characters and store them. And then you'll be able to export them as a JSON file to bring them into systems like Foundry. Particularly, I know Foundry is very popular. But I'm starting with the browser-based system first. And then my hope is that the export feature from that will then help people to be able to then bring it into their favorite Foundry whatever stuff that they've got. Because I know Foundry is full of developers and programmers, and they love their little bits, and everyone's got their own little setup. So, yeah. But definitely working on that, and I'm sinking money into it right now. Once I've got a prototype up, we'll just do a little crowdfunding pre-order, and then, yeah.
All right. Cool. All right. So what else? What else do we need to know about Fragged or Fragged Empire? Because I do want to kind of some of the other stuff.
I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, if you really like, if you like something that's original and it's very deep in terms of its lore and its game rules, if you're looking for a game that really respects both types of role players, game mechanics and the theater, I think Frag could be a good fit. If you want something fresh and deep, and yeah, I think it could be a good one.
Okay. All right. So you did Fragged Empire. Obviously lots of supplements for it. Why did you decide that you wanted to start branching out? Because you've got Fragged Kingdom, I believe. And...
Yeah. Look, it's just for simple, and everyone will get it. I'm just like a GM. Sometimes you want to play a different game. Now we've shot bugs on a ghost ship for long enough. Let's go get some sword and sorcery happening, or let's do vampires and werewolves, or I want to do high school, romance. I don't know, anything. We just mix things up, and I'm the exact same way. Is that I like to mix up what I'm working on. Keeps it fresh. It keeps me thinking in different ways. It keeps it interesting. So I've done second edition Fragged Empire, and I'm working on second edition of Fragged Kingdom. So Fragged Kingdom is my techno-magic fantasy setting, technically set in the same universe as Fragged Empire, but on a world where they've technologically devolved and mythologized their past. So, for example, the goddess of commerce, her name is Corp. The old goddess of life and death, or of life, her name was Neff. And if you ever want to watch a Legion, throw off the power armor and the minigun to become a techno-magical knight, Frag Kingdom's a good one for that. So that's my kind of, I'm still working on it. Crowdfunding won't be till next year, but if you want to play test it, you can jump on my Discord, and I have the PDFs right there. There's a link. Anybody can play Fragged Kingdom right now. That's the game that I'm playing with my own group on Friday nights. We've been playing Fragged Kingdom for a while now. And I use the exact same PDFs or files that I send out to the community. And that's generally the way I like to work. I like to make my rules, get it out there as soon as possible for people to play. And then art and writing just takes time. There's no rushing it. It's just, it's gonna take time. It won't be ready till next year. But yeah, I'm very excited about Fragged Kingdom. I think people will really enjoy that one. I've got some other IPs as well, which eventually, I think after Fragged Kingdom, this is I'm probably going to do a Fragged Eternum too. So Fragged Eternum is my totally not Bloodborne, Dark Souls, Gothic horror game. It's inspired by those. It's not the same. So Fragged Eternum is set in an endless city that goes on forever in every direction. And whenever a building collapses or what have you, celestial beings just pop a new building on top of it. So it's not just the city goes on forever, it's also built on the ruins of a city underneath it. And the players in this one play as tethered. They're immortal, and they're basically gothic superheroes.
Okay.
And so imagine, but a human's this powerful, a player is this powerful, and the things they fight are this powerful. It's also a bit rules lighter than other Frag games, and it's a lot of fun to GM. If you're a GM who likes killing player characters, Fragged Empire, that's got to be your jam, man. Like just one-shotting them and blowing them up and shredding them and ripping to pieces. There's a lot of kind of horror themes in it, but not in that sort of. It's kind of horror, but the players aren't useless. Like they're quite powerful, you know. And when a player dies, a PC dies in that, they come back as a specter and they can keep fighting for a while. And yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. I'm proud of Fragged Empire. Yeah, I've also got pirates, and I've got a diesel punk mecha one as well, and a few other little bits and pieces. And yeah,
and they all use the same core mechanics, correct?
Yeah, same way you make a character, same way you do skill rolls and attack rolls. They've all got their own set of traits and items, though. That's completely different for each one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but once you know one, you will. All the rest of them get really easy.
So
and
sort
part
of.
of that's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say sort of a 21st century Palladium system.
Oh, see, I never did the Palladium systems. Yeah.
Well, I just say because Palladium is for all intents and purposes, it's the same rule set, but then just a new skin layered on top of it.
Yeah. So here's a curious one. So part of the reason I did this is because I just like coming up with new stuff. I can't help it. Part of it's also I want to give people more value for money or value for time. It's probably more better way of putting it. So if you put all the effort into learning a fragged game, there's other stuff you can do with that knowledge. You're not just learning to do science fiction. You're learning and you'll be able to use that other stuff. The other one is fragged is not a generic rule system. I know there's a lot of generic rule systems out there that can then be adapted to any setting. Frag's not that. Each one of these is actually carefully worked for that particular setting.
So I can't take a Fragged Kingdom character and just port them into Fragged Empire.
So you can't for first edition, definitely not. With my second edition, I'm getting better at that. So more intentional. So Fragged Empire 2 and Fragged Kingdom 2 will be mostly compatible. They'll just need a little bit of tweaking to make it work. But for example, so Fragged Empire has a lot more gunplay. Okay, whereas Fragged Kingdom has more magic and melee. And so there's more, but if you really I want all the stuff, I want the guns and the knight, you can combine them, and that's okay. But that's going to be my second edition. You can't do that in any of my first edition games, though. Except for Fragged Empire. Fragged Empire is not going to work with anything else because it's too different.
It's just weird.
It's designed for immortal gothic superheroes fighting fiends the size of skyscrapers. Like, it doesn't work.
Yeah. All right. And so you say, so Kingdom will come out, crowdfunding next year. So then theoretically you'll have it out next year as well.
Yeah. But you can play that right now. And
yeah, I linked the Discord in the chat. So, feel free to go over there. So let's see. All right. So, I want to touch on this just because we had a good interaction and I enjoyed it. So this was actually back in November of last year. You put up your post on Twitter about AI art.
Okay, we're going there.
Yeah.
If you get me in trouble, I will.
I am not trying to get you in trouble at all, and I think I just think it was interesting.
I like to be an open book. I like to talk about stuff. It not only helps me to sort of develop my own thinking, but also it helps to inform other people's thinking. And I like it when people talk up about hard stuff. I know it makes the conversation better. If you just leave difficult conversations to particular types of personalities, it can feel a little off, you know.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
sorry, I'm pulling up the post. So
No, that's all right. I'm quickly scrolling myself to see if I could find it.
that should be it. Yes, that's it. Okay. And actually, let me bring it over. There we go.
Oh yes, yep. Yeah, the discussion on Facebook got a lot more intense than my Twitter post on this one.
Yeah. I've just gotten like super annoyed with Facebook lately. So pretty much like I'll be on Twitter and it's just like, what are game industry type folk saying? And that's kind of like all I look at lately. So all right, do you want to read it off or would you like me to read it off? Because I think you make some interesting points here.
Sure. Okay, so I also this is one little advantage that Facebook gave me. I could put a little edit at the end of it after, because sometimes like people like you put up a post, people talk to you, and you're like, okay, that rounds out your thinking a little bit more. But yeah, okay, I'm happy to do it. Okay, time for a black pill because this Pandora's box is already open, and we need more healthy dialogue. I've seen lots of tabletop RPG creators in both the book and the map fields dive right into AI art, and it has only financially helped them. A hard truth is that our scene is ripe for the use of machine art for three main reasons. One, our field makes use of so many skill sets, and art is commonly seen as the most difficult to both obtain and fund. Most creators are primarily writers or game designers, and not artists or art directors. Two, we are a cottage industry that is fueled by enthusiasts. There is very little money. Nearly all money goes to a few people and companies, and very few in the field are gifted in business and finances. Three, customers. I probably worded this one wrong, but yeah. Customers value quality and low-cost products. This is just a fact of human nature that you can't defeat it, and you can't defeat it. And the cost to quality ratio of art is off the charts. For me and my house, we will be staying away from AI art because A, machine art lacks human soul, beauty, craftsmanship. And Fragged is primarily a creative endeavor that is there for human nourishment. B, I'm in a privileged position to be able to afford talented artists who I both love and respect. C, the tech bros who created these AI art systems have treated artists with utter contempt. I'm never going to say 0% AI art, as there is ethical machine art and my artists may wish to incorporate it into their processes, possibly even using their own art as a data set. Now, I don't know how these talented dudes and dudettes will work things out. This is not designed to be a rage post to harvest attention. I see far too many of those, and I'm still developing my thoughts on this subject, as I always am in all fields of tabletop RPG creation.
All right, so that was 3 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
How has your thought process or opinion changed at all based on the conversation?
Little bits, but I think I'd kind of, so I purposefully held off on this post for a long time, especially when the AI art thing was just hit our industry and hit the internet like a nuke. Okay, I purposely waited many months, read a lot of stuff, talked to people to sort of cultivate what's my attitude, but most specifically sort of thinking what's my business what's it mean for me in Fragged? Because I think that's important. Because I can have my own personal opinions, but ultimately what is the pragmatic outcome this is going to mean? And I feel like I was mostly on the ball there. I think there's probably a few little caveats I put there, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I remember I'll you know what? How about I just share this again?
That's right.
There we go. So we'll show everyone my response. I said, I don't completely agree with your position, but I fully appreciate your approach to it. For machine art lacks human soul, beauty, craftsmanship. I don't I don't think this is always the case. Look at people like Shad Brooks and what he's been doing with it. It's not just write prompt, get magic. He's mixing mediums and using it as an additional tool. That I actually thought was one of your more I'm gonna put it this way, reasonable takes on AI art, where you did there's been this backlash, here locally, there's a game store that's changing ownership, and the new owner went in and just put together had someone put together just like a quick new logo, and they used AI for it, and people were literally like, "Oh, I'm never going to this store again."
Yeah. So there's so look. Okay, I have to 100% caveat. We're never going to cover the whole topic right here, but there's a couple of things here. So I think at the moment it's caused such a shock for a bunch of reasons, because it used to be that getting high quality art was bloody expensive and painful, and then all of a sudden people are doing it and click at a button. There's a human shock to that, and I think especially for artists, and I think that shock, it's kind of like all of a sudden the world works this way, and now there's flying cars. What the hell?
Wait. Hold on. We have flying cars and no one told me?
Well, part of the people who were paying attention knew AI art was coming and they're not surprised. But 99% of the world and a lot of artists utter shock. And so there's this it's quite painful process, I think, for people. And so I've one part of it's just got to let people calm down a bit, because it is here. And so we have to adapt to it. Another part is about artists and this human soul, beauty, craftsmanship thing. I remember, I grew up when digital art was becoming a thing, quite a big thing. And in a past life, I wanted to be a concept artist. And I remember how much I remember people who used to make stuff with 3D models, despised by artists, because they would say, well, this lacks human soul, beauty, and craftsmanship, the words I use. But over years, artists are creative individuals. There's something beautiful about watching an artist work, where they can grab a tool and they grab the human spirit, or this sort of essence of beauty and wonder, and they figure out how to put it together. At the moment, AI art does not have that. I think, though, with time, and this is why I put the caveat in there, like artists will figure out how to use it as part of their process. I think they will figure it out. They will get there. They will find. There's a certain sameness, for example, to all AI art at the moment, especially that really high res, high render, glossy sort of stuff. You kind of tell it, like it all feels the same. Over time, that's going to change. It'll stop feeling the same. The artist will figure out how to use that in a powerful way to enable them to do more art, more powerful, and also allow giving more people access to producing art as well. It's going to happen. But for me, I can ramble on this more. A big thing for me is I want to work with people, for lack of a better term. I want to love the people that I work for. I want to be fans of my artists and my writers. I want to give them all of the respect that I can. And I think part of that is, if I start using AI art, it's gonna feel like a slight to my artists. And I think it'll damage my relationship with people I work with, and it will make Fragged not as good as a product. I think Fragged is a better product by having everything handcrafted.
Well, and I think your comment about leaving it up to the artists themselves, I think was a reasonable take. Like because I actually agree with you. You can tell the difference. Like for me, I've used it for just like, oh, I just need like like actually the background image that we're using right now. The image behind your covers, I didn't need anything fancy, and so I just put like, you know, a star map thing. I don't even remember exactly the prompt, and I just needed something to give me that effect.
Yeah.
And
here's an example of how I've actually used AI art at the moment. So I'll caveat this for a couple of things. So one is I've been using Adobe Firefly, and I know people have mixed feelings about Adobe as a company. I think they're okay. But one thing Adobe Firefly has done is their data set is actually all ethically gained. So they've paid for the data that they've got. And so that's one consideration. But I've used AI in Photoshop, for example, to extend out an image that I've got. I had an image by an artist as an illustration. I needed another 25% out to the side. I used AI art to automatically generate that 25%, and then I went over it with a brush and tweaked it up. Yeah, like I fixed it and modified it, and I used various tricks that I do to sort of flesh it out. And I feel pretty comfortable with that. Like I thought, okay, I'm maintaining the essence of the piece. I'm just for pragmatic book layout reasons. I wanted to extend this out. It gives me an option to do that. I'm using an ethically sourced data set. This feels comfortable, you know?
Right.
This feels okay with that. I'm not AI generating a whole character and go, bam, that, you know, this is a new playable species. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. Yeah.
What about like using it for like concept art? Yeah, it's like I need a rough idea, and then I'm going to give it over to the artist and say, okay, I need something along these lines.
Yeah, see, that's a curious one too, because look, I'm not in the camp of, oh, people are losing their jobs because you're replacing them with a machine. I think you have to adapt or die. It doesn't actually. So, okay, by doing concept art, you are actually taking away from people designing to do things. Fine. It's there. You must deal with it. It's okay. It's how it is. Okay. I also need to acknowledge that I'm in a privileged position where I don't need to do that. Because I'm in a position where I have the funds to be able to pay artists. I'm also a graphic designer and an illustrator. Like I can draw myself. And that's how I send a lot of stuff to my artists is I will sketch up stuff or I know how to find the pieces. And I've also spent over a decade communicating with artists, so I know how to do it. And I've but other people, like, so example in my post here, I made a comment, not many RPG creators are artists or art directors. I'm an artist and an art director. And also make a note that like not many people are gifted in businesses and finance. I'm actually all right at business. And I'm going financially well with Fragged. And so it's kind of okay for me to say, look, I would never do that. But I'm never doing it because I don't need to do it. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely makes sense. And that's where you know, that's why when I saw that, that's why I commented that I didn't 100% agree with you, but I mean, I think I understand it a lot more, your perspective after this little conversation.
And I think it's actually really good that people can disagree on something and having a chat. Even if it's not just to necessarily sway the other person for your opinion, but just to round our opinions off, take the sharp edges off, learn about the exceptions. Or what about if this same question is posed in a different environment? Yeah.
Yeah. Almost like communication.
I know. just have friendly chats, treat people with love and dignity, and, you know, work it out and allow people to change. If I, in a year's time, have a completely different take on AI art, actually, I'll guarantee you, in a year's time, I will have a different attitude to AI art. And part of that is because I'm going to change. I'm going to talk to other people. Part of it's because AI art's going to change. AI art at the moment.
It's changed in the last 3 months.
Exactly. We are at the point. Remember when like the internet was the dial-up modem that make that funny, weird noise
Oh,
that
yeah.
all old people know to what it is
I'm
now.
old.
Exactly. You get it. That's where we are with AI at the moment. We're at the weird dial-up phone stage where everything's sort of awkward. And it's exciting because it's so different. But then in 10 years' time, people are going to go, oh, my goodness, that was so bad. How did they live? You know? And that's what's going to happen, and we've got to allow that to happen, and that's okay. And part of that equation of AI art changing will also be artists. Artists will learn how to use AI appropriately and correctly, and they will show us what AI art looks like when it's used well. Artists, I think, will be the ones that will figure this out. Not us, not the tech guys who created this. I reckon it'll be the artists. And we're talking about visual AI art here, not talking about the other parts of AI.
I was gonna say, yeah, there's plenty of it. Like my regular day job, they are implementing AI for stuff, and so it's like I'm helping a customer, and oh, here's a little AI chat bot that I can use. While I have questions,
Here's an awkward question for people. I don't reckon people realize how much AI writing is already affecting the RPG scene. Like, I think we're all aware of the AI art. Oh, that's interesting. I guarantee you, Wizards of the Coast writers all have ChatGPT open in a side window.
Oh, there was
every single one of them. Like, it's already being used so much, but no one talks about it because it's behind the scenes and no one sees it as
Oh, I caught something on Twitter. I forget who posted it. I want to say it was Dungeon Delver. But basically somebody wanted to send them something for review, and literally he was like, "Yeah, I use ChatGPT to do most of the writing, and I did, Mid-Journey for all of the art, blah blah blah." And like literally everything was AI, and it's like, wait, what did you actually do here? So it's very, very interesting to see where things are going. But I mean, some of the tools like a fellow YouTuber, he uses ChatGPT to put all of his descriptions together and create the hashtags, because it's like he's done the hard work about doing the video, doing the reading, and it's just like the SEO and all that kind of stuff is so key that it's just like, oh, let's just let ChatGPT do that.
And I think the ones that are going to succeed are the people who learn to use this stuff appropriately in the correct way, And I think the ones that are going to fail at it are still going to be the exact same people, the people who aren't putting in the work. Because if you're, how do I put this? I'm gonna target this at. Imagine I'm targeting this just at tabletop RPG creators, okay? Because I'm allowed to attack my own people, okay? The people who don't work hard, not particularly creative, not particularly insightful, and not doing anything interesting are still gonna produce the same rubbish. The people who are passionate, hardworking, creative, and insightful and wise, they're going to make even more awesome stuff.
Yeah,
that it's going to happen. I know it feels all wonky and out of like everything's out of whack at the moment.
Flying cars.
Exactly. It will even out. Give it a little time. The same thing will happen. It will even out. But it's just also part of the equation is the people who succeed will also be the people who can adapt. You must be able to adapt because society changes, technology changes, the scene changes. You've got to be able to adapt as well.
Well,
which will be a tough one for me because I'm all like, I've got my process and I don't like to change,
Oh,
but
changing sucks.
Exactly. Like I spent a decade learning how to do things the way that I do things. I think it would be incredibly entitled for me to be able to say, and therefore I should never have to learn to be different.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to loop it all the way back around, it's that, are we struggling forward? Are we trying to make some progress?
Right, stagnation is rot. Yeah.
So,
but I also want to be part of the change in a healthy way. Like, I'm all for change in a healthy way. Be kind to each other, talk to each other, learn from each other, allow people's opinions to shift. Ignore the rage baiting people who just post angry stuff on Twitter for interactions. They're just doing it for endorphin hits. Ignore them. Find wise people. Talk to wise people. Yeah.
The only change I hate is Wade nerfing my builds.
So Sarah is in my regular gaming group, and
okay.
I let's just say she has a gift for finding overpowered stuff.
So Sarah is your version of my Ben. I have a friend, Ben, and I kid you not, like, oh my gosh. So I just want to tell this story because it's funny. Years ago we played board games a lot more frequently. And did you ever play Descent?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So basically RPG in a box. But Ben always, it's like, oh, I'm going to take this character and I'm going to take this gear and I'm going to da-da-da-da. And I always had to be the bad guy, and I could never hit him because he had just comboed everything out. He's like, oh, if I do this, there's nothing you can do to me.
Yep, he had solved the game.
I'm like, fine, I'll make you take a random character, and there's nothing you can do about it. And he's like, watch this. And every single time he would just break it. And it was, I was going to stab him. But
man, I think I was recently asked about how do you, I think in a recent post I said something about how I never get to be a player. I'm always a GM. Someone made a comment about, could you imagine you playing Fragged? You'd know all the stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I would. And so what I would do is I would try to create actually two approaches I would have, because I'm a reformed power gamer by myself. I was your Ben in my gaming group growing up. Which the hero system was the most stupid system ever. Your power game for that thing. Anyway, if you are a person like that, play a character that's really weird, and try to make it viable. Or secondarily, make a character that makes other people awesome. Take those as your challenges. Don't view the GM as your objective, that you've got to beat.
Well, and that's definitely one thing that is hard in this hobby is there's obviously that natural adversary relationship between the players and the GM. But in reality, it should be more cooperative, in my opinion.
I think it's a particularly beautiful thing when that cooperativeness comes out, because there's so the draw of the power game is there's a satisfaction in figuring out the maths,
right?
Figure it out. It's beautiful. Us as humans, we love that when we figure out the intellectual side of stuff. We solve the logic equation. And so I don't like to take that away, but it's good when you can get a table where everybody's harmonizing together and bouncing off each other, and everybody celebrates everyone else's win. One thing I like to do as a GM, this is a bit of a GM hint for me, is I view yourself as a person who is the champion of your players. When they do something awesome, you should celebrate. You want your players to be amazing. You want to cheer for the critical hits, okay? And the beating of the bad guys. But also, don't let your NPCs ever pull their punches. If they're fighting someone who wants to murder the PCs, have them stab them.
You know, don't fudge your dice. Something I like to do. I probably haven't done this as much recently, but I'd like to get back into this. Is for important dice rolls, I like to roll it in the open. Not just in the open. I like to tell the players what I need to roll. Roll these dice. If I get a 14, I hit you with a great big bloody axe. Okay, because that lets the players feel the tension. And if there's no consequences, might as well be mush, you know? The consequences and the mechanics can aid the narrative, you know? They alter the chemicals in our body to make us feel stuff more real.
So you believe that character death should be an option?
Oh my goodness. I have done horrible things to my PCs. My current PCs are actually not too bad. The last couple of years, I've not actually had many PC deaths. Not player deaths, PC deaths. I'm going to mix that up. But I've had an NPC drown a PC painstakingly, held them in the water, you know, and slowly drown them to death. I've had poisonings. I've had the PC is unconscious and the assassin stabs him again, you know. I am all for it, but at the same time, I've had players defeat whole kingdoms. I've had them fight alien invasions. I've had them save entire space stations. I've had them set nukes off, you know, in like enemy encampments. I've had them throw big bad evil guys off cliffs. All of it should be on the table. You know, you can have a whole encounter comes up and the players come up with something clever. Let them do it. Let them do it. In fact, if it's particularly clever, slightly nudge things to make sure it happens. Totally fine. But if the NPCs have genuine motives too, and they're gonna act on them, and I'm not gonna fudge my rolls.
Wow. That is fun to hear. What's the worst thing you've ever done to your players? I mean, the drowning was pretty bad.
So I think the drowning was a particularly bad one because the player who was in this, the sweetest person. Oh my goodness, they were so sweet. You know, sweetest player, just very nice to everyone. Made friends with the NPCs. If there was a cute animal, you know, they'd befriend it. And then the party split in two. They noticed the big bad evil guy was like, actually, in this one, the big bad evil guy was a paladin. And this paladin was on a coast rescuing slaves who were fleeing. Okay. There's a complex story as to why they were evil. But they charged at the paladin in front of the rest of the party, and the big guy just disarmed her and drowned her. And she failed a couple of skill rolls to gasp for breath, and that was it. She dead. That was a very intense moment.
That's I would not have you know what? I never actually think of drowning for a player. So that's actually kind of nuts. But all right, so let's see. All right, so real quick, folks, we are coming up on 2 hours. Oh my gosh, I'm glad we got here. I was nervous there for a second. Couple of times I'm like, I have nothing. So anybody, if you have any questions, please put them in chat. We'll be more than happy to ask them to Wade. But you know, honestly, thank you so much for, you know, I'll say it now and I'll say it again before we end, but thank you so much for doing this. This has been an absolute blast.
No worries. It's lovely talking to you. I love talking to people about our hobby. It's nice. Yeah.
So then while we wait for questions to come in, is there anything else that you want to tell everybody? Is there anything that you need to share? Anything that people need to know about?
I wish I had something. This is where I like plug my new Kickstarter or something, isn't it? Like
exactly.
Now you're all going to discover the reason why I did this interview was to plug this new thing. No, yeah, buy my Frag books. This year, I've got probably two smaller crowdfunding projects coming up, and Frag Kingdoms next year. If you like what you see, yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Yeah, I really can't. I don't really have any big sales pitches at the moment. I'm really bad at this. Shouldn't I? Like, who the hell goes on and does interviews and doesn't have things to like, now buy my crap, you know?
Well, no, I mean, it just as simple as, yeah, buy your crap. I mean, it's
if you like what you see and you feel like it would resonate with you, give it a shot, and I hope it does. I think it's really good when people find a product that just really matches with them. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay. It's all good.
No, and just to, not that I'm blowing smoke or anything, but no, it has, like, for me, the thing that hooks me in on a game is going to be the story. It's going to be, not necessarily like the novel story, but just like, here's the hook into the game. Here's what you're doing. Here's why you're doing it. And I like what you've done with Fragged Empire. It definitely, the universe feels lived in. It feels like there are things happening. There are stories to be told. The art that you've commissioned for it, all of it put together is fantastic product. And I highly recommend it. Yes, Wade gave me free copies of the core books, or the PDFs. I was going to buy them, but he sent them faster than I could do that. So, there's that. So yeah, folks, it is definitely one that you should check out. It's definitely one that I want to get to the table. I'm just bad at getting anything to the table. That's a whole separate issue. But yeah, so all right. Well, I guess we don't have any questions.
Right.
Or actually,
we kind of got through the couple of the other ones.
This one actually just came in. And actually, this I do need to start doing since it is the beginning of the year. Are you going to be going to conventions this year?
Yeah, so I'm always at PAX Oz in Melbourne, end of year. I think that's October. That's the big one for me.
I mean, it's local,
Yeah. I'm also going to Comic-Con this year, again at Australia. I tried to go to Gen Con. I thought, okay, I'm going to put in my submission to go to Gen Con. I'm going to get tickets to America. I could do this. It was a big deal. Yeah, Gen Con turned me down. So I'm like,
why did they turn you down?
They don't tell you. They just say, okay, submission not accepted, and that's it. So I'm like, I don't know what else I can do. Yeah, it's a tricky thing living in Australia. It's very hard to get to conventions overseas. Just the logistics and the cost of it is tricky, and just getting accepted as well. Yeah.
So were you just trying to get a regular booth, or were you trying to get, because I'm assuming you haven't been to Gen Con before?
No. So there was two different types of booths. I asked for a regular booth and this other new people booth. I can't remember what it was called.
It's like Entrepreneur's Alley or something.
Yeah. So I submitted for both, but yeah.
So you got rejected on both of them. That sucks.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what else I could do. So I'm like, come on, this is like international person. You're supposed to like want us over, but no.
Well, having been to Gen Con, it is nuts. Like the dealer's hall is absolutely massive, and it is literally filled to capacity. So it's not entirely surprising, but it is also a little surprising.
It's okay. It is a bit curious because I know Gen Con's probably the main one that I want to get to overseas. I would also like to help more people in my community run some games at other conventions, but I never quite figured out that equation. I just get a bit too busy to making books to think about the convention stuff. But man, if I lived in America, I'd go to all the conventions.
Well, I mean, again, it's local. I mean, like that was the weird thing. I looked into, because I have a friend in New Zealand, and and I looked into going to New Zealand, and it's like for me to fly from where I live in Phoenix to London was like a 10-hour flight. To get to New Zealand, which seems like it's roughly the same distance, it's like a 24-hour flight.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So all of that is just crazy. But all right. Well, anyhow, I guess at this point, we don't have any other questions, so I guess we'll leave it at that. But Wade, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody, go check out Fragged Empire. Check out the Discord, which nope, not that one. Let me share that one more time, so that way, because yeah, people, if you want to check out Fragged Kingdom, or just check out or meet up with other people who play Fragged, absolutely, please check out the Discord. I'm in it. I haven't said anything yet. I've been, I mostly lurk everywhere. So, anyhow, but yeah, other than that, yes, go buy his books, or hold on, let me put it his way. Go buy his crap. No, but yeah, so we will end it there, folks. Thanks for hanging out, and we will talk to you all next time.